Okay, I just got the signal that we're going to start. My name is Paul Soglin. I'm fortunate and honored to be the mayor of this wonderful city. I've been expending a great amount of fuel the last week. I flew to Washington Thursday for meetings Friday, which included one with the Federal Transit Administration. And then on Monday, I went to Nashville and came back yesterday. So I want to start off by apologizing that I'm not going to stay for the entire presentation. I had a very filled day today and another one tomorrow. So that said, none of the rest of you are excused. I am delighted to welcome you to this community meeting and pleased that we're able to experience the renovation of this building, which we had the ceremony just last Saturday. And if you have a chance when you leave, not all sections of the building are open, but there's a lot of artwork, and much of it is by young Madisonians. And we're very happy that we've got the experience of these really gifted and committed young people to our community in terms of the artwork that's here. We're going to have 3 members of the city staff speaking with us this evening, and it'll be continued with questions, obviously, and hopefully answers. I'm very pleased that the Nelson Institute for Environmental Studies is partnering with us on this event. Our moderator is Professor Asla Gutschman with the Nelson Institute. I hope I didn't do too badly with. Perfect. Thank you, because I'm still not going to get the rest of the names right, even though I work with these guys all the time. Mahanth Joshi is our city fleet superintendent. He joined city staff in 2017, having spent 16 years with the city of New York, and in one division there probably managed a fleet significantly larger than ours. I've never really checked, but that's the case, isn't it? So one of his areas of focus, obviously, is coordination with every city department. All the vehicles that we use, from the mayor mobile to the plows and the trucks that city crews use every day. The panel is going to be included with Yang Tao, who's been with the city since 2006 and has just recently, within the last month or so, been promoted, and he's now the city traffic engineer. He's been leading our Smart Cities initiative, and he's been working on just about every aspect of design, and is just a wealth of information for those of you who are interested in the future of autonomous vehicles. He can go on forever, and it never loses interest. And I also want to, at this point out that while there's a lot of attention focused on the Uber autonomous vehicle experiment in Pittsburgh, some of the work that we focus in California, the work Google's doing, and some of the stuff in the Southwest, some of the most important innovative research on autonomous vehicles is being done right here at the University of Wisconsin in the school's engineering department, and that's going to shed some light. I want to point out what I think are some of the challenges that we'll be looking at with autonomous vehicles. And for any of you who've ever approached the Capitol from East Washington Avenue on a snowy day, and a block or two away from the square as you come up the hill, and everybody's making that right turn on what now is becoming packed snow, in some cases ice, and have learned how to juggle your accelerator and your brake to try and get up the hill and make the curve while one or two cars ahead of you are gradually sliding down. I'm going to believe in autonomous vehicles when they can make that maneuver. Not saying that they can't, but that is one of the challenges, is operating in our kind of climate with some very special needs. Tom Lynch, you know, none of you guys are long-timers. Tom Lynch became the city director of transportation this fall. Took off immediately after he assumed his duties and went off to France on a long-planned vacation, which was in the cards before he knew he was going to be selected. But he's got 30 years of transportation planning in 4 states. He's an advocate for building a strong multimodal network. And if you've attended the neighborhood conference about a month ago, you had an opportunity to hear some of his thoughts on what's happening. I want to just again thank the Nelson Institute for holding their 13th annual Earth Day conference, Imagine and Adapt, Possibilities in a Changing World, which will be April 22nd at Monona Terrace. And I want to note that the 4th National Adaptation Forum will take place here in Madison at Monona Terrace, April 23rd to 25th next spring. And we're expecting attendees from all over the globe. As our world changes and as the climate changes, we're going to have to adapt and make change ourselves. And my own personal takeaway is as we look at alternatives to carbon-based fuels, we literally cannot get locked in to any single opportunity that's out there. For example, right now, there's a great deal of emphasis on electric vehicles. But at the same time, there's a lot of work being done in the auto industry with a focus on hydrogen-fueled vehicles. And one of the things that we'll have to look at is how do we select the technology. You know, those of you who bought Super 8-tracks 30 years ago know that you can make some really bad decisions with supposedly new technology. And that's one of the things that we'll face. But the whole world is going to have to share that dilemma with us. So with that, I want to just thank you all for being here, and let's get me out of the way here so we can make some progress. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor Soglin. Do you hear me all right? Because I hear the echo here, and I want to make sure you don't hear the echo. Thank you. Good evening, and thank you to all of you for joining us for tonight's community forum on Medicine's Greener, Smarter Future Begins Now. I'm Aslı Göçmen. I'm an associate professor at the Nelson Institute for Environmental Studies and the Department of Geography. I joined these 2 units this year, but prior to that, I've been part of the same University of Wisconsin-Madison's Urban and Regional Planning Department. I got a PhD in planning from the University of Michigan, and prior to that, I practiced as a planner and geographic information specialist in the metropolitan Cincinnati area. So welcome. This is the 2nd forum that the Nelson Institute has partnered with the City of Madison to host. Our first was on the impacts of climate change in Madison. You can watch the recording on the Nelson Institute Facebook page. We are particularly happy to be part of these events this year as they are leading up to our annual Earth Day conference, which will be at the Monona Terrace on April 22nd. Basically following what Mayor Soglin was mentioning. The theme this year is Imagine and Adapt, Possibilities in a Changing World, and will focus on climate adaptation. Please watch the Nelson Institute's website for more information, or you can sign up on our listserv. Emily at the back has the sign-up sheet. I'd like to provide a few remarks, and again, I'll be echoing some of what Mayor Soglin already mentioned. Over half of the world's population now lives in urban areas, with an expected increase of 2.5 billion people in the next 30 years. Globally, communities are experiencing great challenges due to the changing climate. And fossil fuel-based transportation practices and automobile-dependent land use patterns are significant factors in climate change. The Environmental Protection Agency recently estimated that over a quarter of the greenhouse gas emissions in the United States are generated by transportation activities, primarily from burning fossil fuel for our cars, trucks, and other vehicles. While we are experiencing challenges to environmental sustainability, both locally and globally, we are also witnessing new technologies that could drastically shape our landscapes and communities and help us move towards a more sustainable future. Some of the more significant innovations are within the transportation sector and include the development of connected vehicles, autonomous vehicles, and vehicles that use cleaner energies and are more fuel efficient. I'd like to mention about 3 different studies that address innovation in transportation for a greener future. 2 are based on a recent nationwide surveys of sustainability-based practices in local governments conducted in 2010 and 2015 by the International City and County Management Association. These surveys, both representing about 2,000 local governments across the nation, have found that local governments, but not very many of them, have taken a range of actions in the area of transportation and greenhouse gas emissions. These actions include purchasing fuel-efficient or cleaner energy vehicles for their fleet and installing charging stations for electric vehicles in their jurisdictions. The 3rd study I want to mention is one of my own. While my main area of scholarship is not transportation, I too have a special interest in today's forum. I'm interested in imagining and learning how transportation-based innovations, especially autonomous vehicles, will shape our built environments and how they will impact environmental sustainability. Autonomous vehicles are considered among the most transformative forces to shape our society in the near future. Their potential benefits for individuals and communities as a whole include increased traffic safety and efficiency, increased mobility for individuals with limited mobility, and increased accessibility for individuals with limited resources to access healthy food, jobs, education, and healthcare. Autonomous vehicles are also expected to significantly impact the way our land is used and have great implications for the sustainability and livability of our communities. According to Donald Shoup, an expert in parking and a professor at UCLA, the largest single land use in any city is parking. In a future with autonomous vehicles, it's estimated that we will not need about 80% of the existing parking areas. Just think about that. Think about the impact of that. There are many potential environmental and quality of life benefits. We can convert these areas for retail, offices, and residences and create more vibrant, sustainable communities. But if we don't prepare well for it, we could also see detrimental environmental impacts. Earlier this year, I conducted a nationwide survey of municipal planners to investigate the extent of which and how planners are preparing for a future with autonomous vehicles. In addition, and quite relevant to the forum's emphasis on greener communities, that particular research investigates how planners are perceiving and envisioning the impacts of autonomous vehicles on environmental and urban sustainability and the impact on land uses. We are currently analyzing the data, so I can only provide some basic findings this evening. Our research found that fewer than 10% of the municipalities across the nation have started incorporating autonomous vehicles in plans, and even fewer have started strategic planning for these vehicles, for instance, by identifying actionable steps, timelines, and responsible parties. Yet the planners have a lot to say about the impact of autonomous vehicles on land uses and the environment, and that's really good news. So planners are thinking about that, and planners can shape the future of our communities, or can help shape the future of our communities. About a year ago, I heard that cities are not ready yet for autonomous vehicles because the fire is not hot yet. However, it's getting hot, and in fact, I would argue that it's already very hot. And I believe that local governments have a great potential in planning and shaping this future. Tonight, we are going to hear from 3 professionals at the City of Madison who are guiding the future of transportation planning, management, and engineering for a greener and smarter community and region. For the format tonight, I'll do some introductions for our panelists in case you have missed Mayor Soglin's introductions. And after everyone has presented, we'll take questions from the audience. So please save your questions till then. First will be Mahant Joshi. Mahant joined the City of Madison as Fleet Superintendent in 2017. After 16 years working in New York City government. He worked for New York City Parks and Recreation, managing vehicle repair, recycling, waste collection, and volunteer programs, among other tasks. In 2012, he began overseeing the safety program for all city departments using the 30,000 vehicle fleet and helped manage preparations and response to Hurricane Sandy, which wrecked the East Coast that same year. In Madison, he's focused on making the city fleet the greenest, safest, and most cost-efficient possible in coordination with colleagues in every department. So welcome, Mahant.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Thank you very much, and thanks to all of you for coming. Fleet Service is actually an internal service agency, which means basically our customers are other city departments, and we buy vehicles for agencies like traffic engineering. So it's nice for me to be in front of you and to talk to all of you about some of the things we're doing. I wanted to thank Mayor Soglin and Deputy Mayor Katie Crawley for giving me the opportunity to come to Wisconsin and work on some of this stuff that I'll show you today. This first slide here, we have some cars lined up nearby at the Capitol Square. Does anyone recognize what these cars are? Yeah. They're electric. Yes, these are Chevrolet Bolts. These are all electric cars, which means they don't have gasoline or fossil fuel engines at all. And they have a range of about 240 miles. And these are the first 3 owned by the City of Madison. We just got them in 2018. So everything I'll be showing you today just started happening in 2018. So very quickly, why should we work on greening the fleet and environmental issues, things that the university is working on or all of our departments are working on? Basically, the news is bad, and I actually think we're in a full-on crisis mode, and we need to be on war footing. And just some of the few examples I'll bring up. I don't want to bore you too much, but record high levels of temperatures across the world in different places. You have major hurricanes and other natural disasters happening as well. and it's happening around the world. It's not just the United States, but it's also in Asia, it's in South America, it's in Europe, et cetera. And this is a picture from the wildfires that just happened in California. When I was looking for pictures, there's so many to choose from because it was such a large event, largest event in history for California wildfires. That just happened this year. You see record amount of flooding all over the world, in Asia, in Europe, in other parts of the world as well. And unfortunately, we've got a piece of that here, right here in Madison, Wisconsin. There was a major event that started in August and continued right here. And the University of Wisconsin has done some great research on how climate change has affected our own weather patterns here in central South Wisconsin and other parts of the world. So a lot of this flooding is definitely due to the weather patterns and the climate change that we're seeing. So the list goes on. There's so many events, and the costs you can see here run in the billions of dollars. As was mentioned before, I was in New York during Hurricane Sandy. A lot of us who worked in city government in New York City, that was our job for the next 6 months or so. A lot of people died in that event, and it cost about $60 billion in Connecticut, in Long Island, in New Jersey, New York City, in that environment. It's a lot of money, a lot of damage, and the recovery takes a long time. And as I mentioned, we had an event here, and that's $300 million estimated for Dane County alone. Okay, so the news isn't all bad. There's a lot we can do, but to target what we're going to talk about today is the transportation sector. If you look at this pie chart, there's estimates that it's about 28% of the greenhouse gas emissions are coming from the transportation sector. And that's what we hope to tackle today. Does anyone recognize this map and what these dots are? These are the military bases in the Middle East, and there's quite a few of them. When I was a kid, I lived in the Middle East, and I went to school actually in one of these bases, but it's actually not even on this map. It was a secret U.S. military base, so I can't tell you where it was. But I spent some time there. I got to meet the pilots during the first Gulf War. It was a great experience for a 12-year-old kid. However, most of this infrastructure, all these troops that we send over, all the money we're spending, all the vehicles that we send over there, tanks and planes and aircraft carriers, all that stuff is very expensive. We do it mostly to protect some of our oil interests and gas interests in that area of the world. So when we're talking about fossil fuels, it's not just the emissions that we see here locally when we burn gasoline or diesel from our vehicles. We're actually shipping this stuff from South America or the Middle East, and our military has to protect the air and sea lanes to get it here. So there's other costs, what I like to call upstream costs, to us using fossil fuels. Okay, so on to the good news. So we started this year using biodiesel. If you're not familiar with biodiesel, it's basically got a lot of the same properties of regular diesel, but it's coming from different sources instead of fossil fuels. It's coming from things like soybean plants, and you probably know Wisconsin grows a lot of soybean plants right here. The part of the plant that's used is different from the food portion of soybeans. So when we make food out of soybean plants, there's a byproduct which is used for oil. Similarly, there's other agricultural waste that goes into biodiesel after getting processed. And also you can use cooking oil that's already been used, can be processed, turned into biodiesel. So the city started buying large quantities of biodiesel just this year in blends of up to 10%. We're hoping to double our biodiesel purchasing for 2019. So we're on an upward trajectory. We're estimating that by running these in our trucks, things like the fire truck you're seeing here, that we're saving about 1 million pounds of carbon dioxide from being emitted into the air. And we're hoping to use more biodiesel going forward. So like I mentioned, it's a renewable source. It's largely a Midwestern sourced, so it's coming from places like Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, Nebraska, some of these Midwestern states. So it's not traveling as far for it to be processed and brought into our fleet. So we're supporting the local economy as well. So I did want to mention the economic effects of using things like biodiesel, and I'm hoping that more fleets around the area would use biodiesel as well. Okay, electric cars. The mayor mentioned this, and this is definitely a part of the puzzle. It's an important part. So we got our first 3 Bolts. Chevrolet makes them. They're also assembled in Michigan. And the range has just gotten much better as the battery technology has gotten better. So we're up to about 240 miles on a charge, which is more than enough for what most city employees need. City employees need to get to meetings or go to inspections or to do site visits around the city. 240 miles should get most of us where we need to go if we're charging the vehicle overnight. Another thing worth mentioning on the economic side, electric cars have a lot less maintenance. There's less moving parts. The brakes don't wear out as much as it does on a regular car. There's no engine oil. There's no lubrication fluids, so you don't have to change the oil, which is a big part of any maintenance program. So we're actually seeing a savings on time and effort and on funds for maintaining these vehicles as well. So we recently applied for a grant from the State Office of Energy Innovation, and we got the good news that we're receiving the grant, and Jeannie Hoffman here, she helped work on that grant project, and that's going to help us buy another 20 electric cars in the next 2 years. So pretty soon we'll have the largest electric fleet in the state of Wisconsin. I would actually invite any other fleet operation around Wisconsin to try to compete with us. The more people that buy electric cars, the better. All of the stuff that we're working on here, I would actually hope that other fleets and also members of the public would think about. So all of you could be driving electric cars as well. And it's not that difficult. You'll actually see the savings on the fuel side. If you own the car for 5 or 6 years, you'll have made your money back, the extra investment you would need on an electric car. Okay, so the police department we've partnered with to purchase a number of hybrid electric cars. So this is a Ford Fusion hybrid. This car is replacing a lot of the Chevy Impalas. This is for the police detectives that are traveling around the city. And just from replacing 7 cars so far, from Impalas to Ford Fusions at the end of their life, we're actually increasing miles per gallon from 18 to 43 on each of these cars. So more than double the fuel efficiency, which means we're spending half as much on gas. That's half as much emissions than we're getting before. So going forward, I'm hoping to work with the police department to buy only hybrid cars or electric cars from now on. And we're replacing about 35 cars a year. So it's a significant step forward for us. There's some hybrid truck options as well. So you might have seen these out on the street. I know Yang's department has some of these. These are called bucket trucks, or sometimes they're called tree trimmers, that are operated by the Parks Department or traffic engineering utility companies like MG&E. So the hybrid technology allows the truck to go to a work site and actually operate and do all of the work it needs, whether it's a telephone pole or a traffic light or a tree, and shut off the diesel engine. So the engine's off, and the electrical system on the truck will actually allow the workers to go up in the bucket and do whatever they need to do. So now what you're doing is you're parking in a neighborhood for 4 hours, 5 hours maybe for a job. You're not polluting the air. There's no noise on the electrical system, and there's no emissions. So by investing a little more in trucks like this, they are a little bit more expensive. We're saving a lot of emissions. So we're hoping to get some of these kinds of trucks next year. Okay, so anti-idling is an important technology as well. So I broke my arm last year, and I was picked up by an ambulance, and I spent some time in the back of one. And a lot of times ambulances need to idle to get somewhere, to pick someone up, to check them out medically, whatever they need. And during that period, the engine is running of the ambulance. It might be gasoline or diesel. During that period, you're emitting a lot, and you have to keep the equipment on that's in the back of the ambulance. There's a lot of medical equipment and the air conditioning and that kind of thing. So by switching to anti-idling technology, which we've begun doing in 2018, we have ambulances that can actually go to the site. You can shut off the engine, and the medical personnel can do whatever it is that they need to do. So the fire department's partnered with us on this, and hopefully all the fire ambulances we get from now on will be anti-idle. We're saving about 40% on fuel use from these ambulances. And also the maintenance program, it's much better for the maintenance because the engine isn't running the whole time while they're doing their medical work. So this is great technology. The technology is getting better every year, and we're hoping to continue investing in this. Okay, compressed natural gas is also a piece of the puzzle. So the Dane County is running a landfill program where they're converting the landfill methane that's generated by the trash in the landfill into compressed natural gas, which is actually powering a number of county vehicles right now. A lot of the plow trucks and garbage trucks and other kinds of trucks the county runs. So we're looking at investing in CNG as well. There's a number of operational challenges with CNG. You need special fire suppression equipment, which our garages currently don't have. We're not outfitted with. You also have to invest a fair amount more money on the vehicles for CNG. But we think it's worth looking at, and it's a much cleaner fuel as well than regular diesel. Okay, finally, propane. This is widely available for off-road equipment like forklifts, propanes, and also it's a cleaner fuel than diesel or gasoline as well. Okay, so we're also putting GPS systems on vehicles. Generally what this does is it tells you where the vehicles are, tells you how fast they're going and what they're doing. So we'll be able to identify idling behavior and to see if it's necessary or not, and hopefully coach our staff at all the different departments that use public works department vehicles that are all over the city doing various things. If we cut down on speeding, and hard braking, hard acceleration, hopefully we'll cut down on accidents as well. So there's a safety component. And then if we cut down on idling, that will also reduce noise pollution and air emissions. So we're also building a new fleet facility. A lot of you might have heard on North First Street, our old garage is being converted to another use. It will be the new public market, and we're on schedule to move into our new facility in 2020 that's on Nakusa Trail. A lot of great stuff that the engineering department's working on for this building, including solar panels and including a solar heating wall, which will take sunlight, convert it to power. And also it will be outfitted for CNG, as I mentioned, so that we can fix CNG vehicles and service them at this new facility. So it's going to be state of the art, and we're really looking forward to that. Okay, something else our staff and I brainstorm all the time, and something we came up with recently is we're using all kinds of fluids for our maintenance program. That's engine oils and lubricants and floor scrubbing liquids and various kinds of antifreeze and a lot of things. So we're doing a review of all of these fluids to see if there's more environmentally friendly versions available that we can use and that we can purchase. And that should because they're made from all kinds of different materials. Some of them are petroleum products, and I think we'll be able to make progress there. Another thing we're doing, and I mentioned earlier that we're hoping everyone kind of joins into some of these initiatives. We're working with all of the other area fleets, the county, the state, the University of Wisconsin fleet as well. They have a large fleet program. We meet with this group meets biweekly, and we discuss ideas, a lot of like what we're talking about today. Madison has a lot to learn from the other fleets as well, and we're sharing what we are learning. And MG&E is on this as well. I know there's a representative from MG&E here. They've been a great partner, just as University has, and all of these other groups. Okay, so what we're looking at here is the car I used to drive. It's an SUV, a black Honda CR-V, and then the car I've switched into, it's a little two-door Toyota Scion. Just for my own use to get around, I don't need an SUV, and this little car is good enough for me. It's actually the car my staff makes a lot of fun of me when they see me driving around in, but more than doubled my own fuel efficiency to get around, and I really don't need the larger vehicle. And so I'm encouraging all of our operations to look at, do they really need the vehicle that they have? Do they really need a pickup truck to do something an SUV could do? Could we switch to a sedan for something an SUV is doing right now? And I think, that's the low-hanging fruit, and we can save a lot of gasoline and diesel by doing that. Okay, finally, this is something I'm really glad Madison is becoming a leader in. The federal government is not doing enough in this area, but there are groups that are doing a lot. Cities are taking the lead. New York City now is almost running 2,000 electric vehicles for their operations. It hasn't impacted anything that New York City does. They're getting everything done that they need to by converting to electric cars. They're not really falling behind in any way. Countries like China and India are mandating that everything's going to be electric by years such as 2030 is one of the goals that China and India have set, and I feel like the United States should be in the lead on this, and so we're hoping to see more progress at the federal level here. It might require a change. And related to that, there's a climate mayors group that Mayor Soglin has signed on to, along with over 400 other mayors who are aggressively looking at electric vehicle technology and other things that cities can do to attack the problem of climate change. And finally, the future, there's some talk about autonomous vehicles that we'll hear soon. There's other things we'll soon be seeing that aren't currently available, like solar-powered car charging, which is something I'm hoping we get into soon. And we're looking at an electric Tesla truck. Electric trucking isn't a mature market yet, so we can't just convert the truck fleet to electric just yet, but one day we might be able to, so we're researching that, and we're encouraging all of our manufacturers that we buy from to go in that direction. Thank you very much. I appreciate your attention, and questions later.
Thank you very much, Mahan. Next, we will have Yang Tao. Yang has been with the city since 2006 and currently oversees the operations and staff of Traffic Engineering Division. Yang obtained his PhD degree in civil engineering from the University of Wisconsin-Madison with a minor degree in business and is a graduate of the city's Leadership Development Program. Yang has been leading Madison's Smart Cities initiative and has been working with various city agencies, UW-Madison, and a consortium of other public and private entities in envisioning a next-generation people and data-centered transportation system for Madison. Yang is experienced in multimodal transportation and is the current president for the Wisconsin section of the Institute of Transportation Engineers. Please welcome Yang.
Thank you, Professor. And good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming. I also want to thank Mayor Soglin and Deputy Mayor Crowley for giving us the opportunity to talk about our work for our residents and our visitors. I want to thank Professor Gotchman and the Laos Institute of Environmental Studies for the partnership. I want to thank also Jane Hoffman and the team for setting all this up for us. So really appreciate that. But especially, I want to thank the mom in the back for bringing our youngest audience tonight. You know, that's really the future of our city. And, you know, tonight's presentation is about now, but also, you know, about the future. Mahad did a really good job giving us some ideas about what the cities are doing to make our future greener. I'm going to talk a little bit about, what they're doing to make our future smarter. And I would like to begin with a story. The story involves two companies, Ford and Tesla, both well-known companies. As we know, Ford is a household brand name company and was founded by famous Henry Ford in 1903. Coincidentally, Tesla was founded exactly 100 years later in 2003. In 2016, Ford sold about 7 million vehicles with a handsome profit about $5 billion. On the other hand, Tesla, as a really young company, only sold about 76,000 vehicles with a huge loss, about $1 billion. Well, on April 3rd, 2017, something unthinkable happened. The market value of Tesla overtook that of Ford. So at the time, if you are one of the customers of Goldman Sachs, you may receive advice that sell off your Tesla stock as soon as possible. And that turned out to be a really bad advice because the stock value not only stayed over there, but also overtook the market value of GM, and became the most valuable automaker in the United States. Again, if you look at the financials, it doesn't make sense at all. In every respect, from revenue, from vehicles sold, from profit, there is no comparison. Tesla is doing very poorly, while GM and Ford are doing very well. So is the market crazy or not? Just like our president, Elon Musk, really likes to tweet. And, and this is how he defends the phenomena on Twitter. So Tesla is absolutely overvalued if you're talking about if you're based on the current cash flow, but that's all irrelevant. Because the keyword here is really the future. And I would like to share a couple quotes with you. The first one is from Mary Barra, the chairman CEO of General Motors. We will see more change in the industry in the next 5 to 10 years than we had in the last 50. The second quote is from Councilwoman O'Connor from the city of Santa Monica, California. The challenge is that we don't know what's coming, but we know it's coming. We all have to learn to change on a dime. I definitely agree to that, but I also want to add that not only we don't know what's coming, but really we don't know when it's coming. So here is an example. In 2015, there is an organization called the National Leagues of Cities. They produced a report called the City of the Future, Mobility and Technology. It's a forward-looking document, had a lot of bold predictions. So one of them is the big challenge. It says, by 2030, driverless technology will be deployed in fleets of taxis and buses. So you're talking about 15 years. However, though, only a few months later, I think in September 2016, we saw the headline everywhere. Uber starts self-driving car pickup in Pittsburgh. So really, there's a lot of challenges facing our industry, a lot of changes coming. So to help the cities to cope with the changes, potentially looking at the benefits and avoid the pitfalls, US DOT had a brilliant idea. They put together $40 million. They want to give it just one city to develop a model system for all the cities. At the city of Madison here, we participated in that competition, but as you all know, we didn't win the $40 million. But we did come up with a lot of good ideas through the process. So we developed a plan called Building a Smart Madison for Shared Prosperity. We were able to gather around a lot of partners for the initiative, with the main partner being the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Others including local businesses like MGE, Epic Systems, others like Wisconsin DOT, the Madison Area Transportation Planning Board, and others like some of the taxi companies like Green Cab. So there are three main components in the plan. The first one is about data, intelligent data connection, analysis, and sharing. The second one is about vehicle technologies, which Professor Gotchman talked a little bit about in the opening remarks, about autonomous vehicles, connected vehicles, and electric vehicles. And the third component is about infrastructure, how to make the infrastructure smarter. For the data component, the core we are envisioning is a shared Madison data platform. It's going to have all kinds of transportation data in it, and we want to make it open to the public. Based on that, we want to develop applications such as performance analytics, looking at how well we do in real time, develop a ride-sharing microtransit algorithm to help moving traffic, and algorithm for sharing the data from all different sources. Applications development for communities. Thank you. Yeah. One good example is that, as you know, a few years ago, the city opened up our bus location data in real time. And a community member developed a cell phone app that became very popular in the community. So I think lots of us are using it on a daily basis. So that really says the value of sharing data and trust the community members develop applications for everyone to use. And that community member become actually very successful right now. That's what we like to see. We also want to develop a smart parking algorithm to avoid people driving around looking for parking spots. Want to make that process that's very wasteful, produce a lot of emission. Want to solve that problem. Also, smart free delivery, a single payment system for all transportation needs. You can just use one system to pay for your bus ticket, to pay for a bicycle rental, to pay for parking, and others as well. And also, we want to use a system, use the data to do real-time simulation for our better decision-making. For vehicle technologies, the first one is autonomous vehicles, which also called driverless cars or self-driving vehicles. If you look at the top picture, so that's a small macro transit vehicle. That's what the city at this point really interested in. We're not promoting that everybody go out and get by your own driverless vehicle. We really want to see the vehicles being shared. We want to develop a system that we can have driverless shuttles running around the city to complement our existing bigger bus fleet. So, for example, when you have a small neighborhood to serve, which is not possible financially, using a regular bus system, we can use this type of system to help residents. The second one is connected vehicles. If you look at the center picture, that means vehicles can talk to each other, also talk to pedestrians on the road, also talk to bicycles on the road. By doing that, we can improve safety and mobility. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. And the bottom picture is about the electric vehicles, which Mahad did a very good job on describing, so I'm going to skip that part. Smart infrastructure, you're looking at a network of thermal and environmental sensors and air quality sensors. So we know what the community is looking like in real time. We are also developing adaptive corridors for traffic safety and mobility. I'm going to talk a bit about that more as well. We want to build a city-owned 5G network and connect all the public vehicles to it. And we want to make our street lighting system smarter and efficient. And I'm going to talk a bit more about that as well later. We want to do smart grid improvements, and we want to build advanced condition avoidance system to improve traffic safety. We also have an intelligent transportation system strategic plan that we developed along with other partners such as the MPO. So we want to accelerate the deployment of those. So for the next section, I'm going to quickly go through some of the ongoing initiatives for the city. The first project is our state-of-the-art traffic signal system. We start to use the advanced traffic controllers, which is the brain for each signal locations, which controls how much time each approach you get. We started using new controllers that are compatible with future technology. And we are taking advantage of the robust fiber optic communication network that the city built up over the years, and we're connecting all the traffic signals to it. So now we have the ability to know what's going on at the signal in real time for each second, for each moment. We know exactly what's going on, whether it's pedestrian crossing the street, which face has the green, what the congestion looks like. So we know that information. With that, we can do troubleshooting much more easily. When we see something wrong, instead of waiting for a report from a citizen, we can go out and a lot of times, can fix a problem remotely from a central office. Also, we can do a lot of timing change really easily, for special events, for different weather events. A good example would be the flooding event that we have seen in August to September. There are a lot of road closures and openings going on, and we were able to use a system, do a lot of timing change almost in real time, so that to help traffic flow and try to avoid congestion and crashes. As you know, feedback from community is really, really well. There's some delays, but overall, the traffic is moving pretty smoothly throughout the event. So we like to do more of those. And we also are installing a lot of innovative detection system and count system, not only for motor vehicles, but also for bicycles, for pedestrians. And we want to give, this system also give us performance measures, so we know how we do and where we can improve. The second project is the adaptive traffic control corridor that I just talked a little bit about. We quickly become the national leader in this technology. What it does is that, for the major corridors, the signals knows exactly what's going on corridor-wide. So they know how much traffic are coming at them from the upstream signal. What it does is that, so it changes its timing plan to prepare automatically for the arriving traffic. So when the traffic arrives, we can reduce, the congestion stops and the pollution from it. We did our first project on McKee Road and Fitzpatrick Road in partnership with the Wisconsin DOT and Dane County and the city of Fitchburg for the Verona Road reconstruction project. Independent study showing that we cut the stops and emission by up to 20%. So that's a really good number. And we got the Project of the Year award from an organization in Wisconsin. The second corridor will be on University Avenue. We got federal funding for it. It's being constructed right now, so it's going to be available in a couple of months or so. And we also got a state funding to do a third corridor that's on East Washington Avenue. That's from the Capitol all the way to Easttown area, very long stretch. And more in planning. Street lighting, we are making it smarter and more energy efficient, especially using the LED technology. And we started to get them connected as well, so we have remote control to them. One big benefit is that for outage. So right now we depend on our citizens to report to us, oh, there is a street light out, can you come out? Sometimes that takes days, sometimes takes weeks. So with this technology, we're going to know instantly that something wrong, and we can send a crew to get it fixed, for public safety. It can also host, other smart city technologies. I'm going to talk about a little bit later. This project, many of you may saw it on local news, is the Smart Park Street Corridor. We are pilot and deploy connected vehicle technology to improve traffic safety, mobility, bus on-time performance, and also transporting equity. A couple of examples that we are working on. The first one is a safety application. As pedestrians, a lot of us has this concerns that when we cross the street, oftentimes the turning vehicles are not yielding to us. Sometimes they're not paying attention, but sometimes, especially for larger vehicles, it's kind of hard for them to see pedestrian in crosswalk. So what we're doing here is that when we detect the pedestrian in the sidewalk, in a crosswalk, we're going to send an alert to the vehicles that equip the technology that there is a pedestrian crossing in a crosswalk in your way. So please pay attention. So that alert can really bring the driver's attention to the pedestrian. Hopefully we can avoid some of the tragedies that happen on our streets and on the nation's streets. A second example is for bus. As you know, along this corridor, lots of residents here are low income, and they heavily depend on the bus system to go to work, go to school. So we want them to go to work, go to school on time, and help the bus move. One application we're doing is that we want to provide the buses priority when they approach a traffic signal. And we're going to do that in a brand new way. So right now, some cities are doing that, but it's a very basic system. So basically the signal knows that a bus is coming, so it let the bus go through a little bit quicker. So for a new system we're developing, it's much more advanced. Not only that we know a bus is coming, we also know how many passengers are on board. For example, if you have two persons on a bus compared to 50, that should be treated very differently. Also, we know that which bus is this bus going to connect to, whether the other bus is on time or off schedule. If the other bus is off schedule anyways, it may not be that important to move this bus through as quickly as possible. So those are a couple examples that we're working on. And we really want to make Madison and Wisconsin as the upper Midwest hub for this type of application. We also get a lot of national attention for the project. So that one is from the National Center of National Operations Center of Excellence. They featured our project on their national website. I also want to quickly talk about a lot of things that the mayor and Professor Gauchman already kind of touched on. The driverless vehicle technology. As you may learn that actually the Madison area is one of the 10 former U.S. DOT designated AV proving grounds with UW-Madison as a lead agency on it. The city is a founding partner of it. So the proving ground offers a different range of facilities from a closed track system to street system. So for the beginning technology, it goes on to the closed system, so that if something bad happens, no big deal because nobody around. It's all controlled. From there, it can advance to more sophisticated environment, like some of the UW streets, and eventually, if we can handle the game day traffic on Regent Street, which is a kind of a center right picture, you can call the technology a success. And also, when it can handle the mayor's challenge of going up East Washington Avenue on a snowy and icy day. So the proving ground, under the need of UW, is doing a lot of good research, some of the focus areas of the proving ground. You may remember back in April this year, we did a demonstration on UW campus. So the vehicle is fully 100% autonomous, 100% electric vehicle. It seats about 15 passengers. And we had a demo for a few days. Not the community members had a chance to get on and experience it themselves. I have a picture. When I was there, I happened to see vision impaired resident taking the vehicle. Especially for her, it's going to be a life-changing technology. A little bit about the future of it. As Professor Gauchman mentioned, that there are a lot of potential, a tremendous amount of benefits can be achieved from a technology. For example, safety, mobility, and the environment, equity for seniors, disabled, and other underserved members of the community. We can have a better land use utilization, and that also means economic development opportunities. However, though, if the technology is not used correctly, it can be a very different scenario. Instead of a utopia, the future can be a dystopia. For example, if the driving becomes so convenient, people may abuse it. So people may decide to move further away from the city center because the land is cheaper. When they come to work, they can sleep in a vehicle or work in a vehicle. It's no big deal. So they can afford to live 2 or 3 hours away from work. And when they do arrive city center, instead of paying for parking, they may decide to send the vehicle back home. So it really creates unnecessary trips. Also the businesses. For example, the clothing store, I may choose not to pay the rent on State Street, have my store over there. Instead, I have all the clothes in the vehicle. When the customer wants to buy clothes, I send the vehicle to his front door. He pick the clothes from the vehicle and try it on, put it back the unwanted clothes, and the vehicle drives away to the next customer. If that happens, we'll have a disaster on our streets. So where it goes really depends. Depends on what we're doing today. If we leave the technology to the hands only of a handful big corporations in the country, it's going to end up somewhere that's not going to be the best for the public. So really, for great public good, we need a collaboration across different sectors. We need government policy, academic research, industry collaboration, and also public engagement. So I really want to thank the local communities and the media for doing a lot of public engagement on this matter. There has been a few events in the community in the past. Another initiative that the city staff is looking at with the mayor's office is that how we're talking about the different smart city technologies. We're talking about small cell coming to different cities, but where to put them? We don't want all these devices be up on our beautiful decorative streetlight poles, and we don't want it be in front of people's windows. So we're looking for alternatives. So one idea is to go in underground, a smart vault. Another idea is to hide it in the poles instead of on the poles, but hide it in the poles. Also, maybe something called a smart hub, which has two giant screens can display public information or advertisement. At meantime, it has also a smaller screen for interactions with the customers, such as pay for parking meters or check out the bus information, things like that. And inside of it, all the devices can be hosted. So that's kind of a detailed dimension for one of the technology we're looking at. And finally, I want to briefly mention the city's involvement in the Smart Cities Collaborative. Back in 2016, a national organization called the Transportation for America, they partnered with Sidewalk Labs, which is part of Alphabet. As you know, that's the parent company of Google. They selected the 16 most forward-thinking cities in the country to form this group called the Smart City Collaborative to look at how can we make a city smarter. And Madison is one of the cities being selected. So it's mostly a grant program. So they sponsored a lot of online meetings, in-person meetings. So the cities gathered together, really had a lot of discussion, a lot of collaboration on different projects. Our initiative has received a lot of attention and some awards. And this one is from a major award from the Institute of Transportation Engineers. It's an international award for transportation planning. With that, that's contact information, and I can answer questions a little bit later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yang. Finally, we have Tom Lynch. Tom has been recently hired as the Director of Transportation for the City of Madison. He's a registered professional engineer, professional traffic engineer, professional transportation planner, and a certified planner with the American Institute of Certified Planners. Tom has almost 30 years of practical transportation planning experience in 4 states. He's an advocate for building a strong multimodal transportation network that meets the needs for all users. Please welcome Tom.
Great. So I'm going to ask the cameraman, if I gave this presentation in front of the TV, would that work or would that not work because I don't have a microphone? Do you mind if I do? Because I don't know my presentation as well as these people, so I'm going to have to look at the screen to see what I'm Yeah, so how about, is it all right if I do this? I feel better doing this, so, okay. Okay, thank you. This is an interesting article that was in Inc. magazine. It's a web magazine, I think, 2 months ago, and it says, why Madison, Wisconsin attracts more millennials than any other city. There were some interesting quotes in that. It said, Madison is the smallest big city in America, and I mean that in the best possible way. It's a top 15 global city in access to venture capital per capita because of its connectivity. It goes on to say Madison is where Austin was in the late 1990s. So remember that statement. Madison is where Austin was in the late 1990s. It has the talent, access to capital, connectivity, and livability that is seen in all major growing startup markets. So Madison is growing. This is over by Madison Yards, over by the Hill Farms area. Everywhere you go, you see cranes, right? This is, I don't know where that is. Does anyone know? I don't know. Someone sent me that picture. Okay, good, ULI. I'm a East Sider, so this is East Washington. And East Washington has just been transformed over probably the last 5 to 8 years, right? This, I think, is off of University. This is Willie Street. So I'm kind of that's my hood, right? And even on Willie Street, we're getting multi-story buildings with lots of dwelling units. This is a population of Madison and Dane County. In the year 2000, we were just a little bit above 200,000. Dane County was slightly under 500,000, right? In 2017, we're about 250,000. Dane County's over 500,000. Now, the official projections from the DOA statistics are that we'll be just shy of 300,000 by 2050, and Dane County will be about 640, okay? But that's not taking into, those are the DOA conservative projections. If we were to grow at the same rate that we've grown since 1990, so if you go from 1990 to 2017 and say, well, we're not going to grow any slower, we'll probably grow at the same rate, right? Well, we would actually be 350,000, and our Dane County would be approaching or exceeding 1 million. So in my mind, this means that we need to start thinking like a metro area of 1 million people. And what do we need to serve a metro area of 1 million people? Let's look at employment. 200,000 jobs in 2010 in Dane County. Isn't that amazing? That's a lot of jobs. A lot of people are working here. Projections for that. For 2050, Dane County, 85,000 more jobs. Madison, 45,000 more jobs. And then the Isthmus, 10,000 more jobs. So you think about it, where would we put 10,000 parking spaces in the Isthmus? Do you think about that? If you take all of our parking spaces now, our public and private parking spaces, that's 10,000. So could we really double that? Probably not, Maybe autonomous vehicles will save us, right? All the cars will be driving around and they'll never have to park, right? All right, so I like to do back-of-napkin calculations to help me understand. And this is a back-of-napkin calculation that I've now transferred to a PowerPoint slide. We look at East Washington in the morning rush hour. We have 3 lanes. It's a traffic engineering calculation, but we have basically a capacity of 3,300 vehicles per hour. Okay? If we look at the daily traffic and multiply it by how much occurs during the peak hour, we have a demand for 3,600 vehicles per hour, right? So we are already exceeding the capacity of East Washington by 300 vehicles per hour. And do any of you drive on East Washington? Is this true? Is this true? I'm stating truth, right? Well, let's say we add 10,000 jobs in the Isthmus. That would create an additional demand for 2,100 vehicles, if 30% go on East Washington, okay? So that's 2 more lanes in each direction, okay? So let's look at a street view. This is from Google. I didn't give it credit, but this is Google. This is East Washington looking there, and you can kind of see where one lane would be, right? It would take up the parking lane, but then the second lane, we're on the other side of the sidewalk. Is that really reasonable? Can we really do that? So if we go back to Austin, the study shows Austin traffic congestion among the nation's worst. A frightening view of things to come for Austin. Traffic congestion can be a job killer. Austin, the cars have taken over. In fact, I think it's labeled one of the top 5 congestion areas in America. And really, kind of what happened with them is that we have this land use transportation equation, right? In fact, in our comprehensive plan, land use and transportation are coupled together because they're related, right? And Austin really worked on the land use component, right? But they didn't really work on the transportation component, or they chose to rely on the automobile for the transportation component. And now they're experiencing the consequences. Now for us, let's look at a different path. We have 38 buses coming downtown on the Isthmus, okay? And they have a capacity of 1,500 people, okay? So what if we just doubled that? If we doubled that and we made those buses, instead of 40-foot buses, 60-foot buses, we've taken care of all of our transportation need. So that would be a bus every 40 seconds. You know, does that seem more reasonable? We could do, you know, 2 lanes in both directions in East Washington or more buses. You know, it's a more sustainable solution. Let's look at our mode of transportation from the MATPB report. Currently, about single occupancy vehicles, about 61%, multi-occupant vehicle, 7%, bike, 5%, walk is 10%. That surprised me. That's a pretty good statistic. You know, 10% work trips are by walking. Telecommuting is 5% and transit's 10%. What if we could just increase those? What if we doubled our bike share and doubled our transit share? We could take care of our transportation needs and we could serve those jobs and new residents. Can we move from being a big little city to a little big city? I'm saying this all the time, but I really mean it. You know, we have to start thinking like a metro area of 1 million people. This is I've been starting to clip articles regarding transit, and this one is how the Twin Cities got transit right, the right way to renew a city, and here they have the metro there. Any of you been to Minneapolis? I mean, they took some very courageous steps 2 decades ago to put in that transit infrastructure, and in fact, it took a lot of private investment, and now they're reaping the rewards. Their city is flourishing. Areas with mass transit see job growth, research indicates. This is an interview from NPR. I'm going to read this. This is the main reason why I have to be in front, because I have to see it. I have to be really close. The council's research shows that more than half of the jobs created in Chicago area now are located within a half mile of public transportation stops. Other studies show similar economic development patterns in downtown areas all across the country, with job growth greatest in the areas that are well served by transit. And Winecki says it appears that mass transit also fosters economic resiliency. They go on to say Chicago isn't the only region experiencing this kind of business boom. From Seattle to St. Louis, Minneapolis to Atlanta, companies are relocating near transit lines. But Kirk Dillard, who heads Chicago's Regional Transportation Authority, says many of the nation's aging transit systems are in desperate need of upgrades. Here's some interesting things regarding economic advantage. Transit can provide a strategic economic advantage. These 2 clippings are from Cleveland. Cleveland has really invested heavily in BRT. And here this says, Cleveland's Euclid Corridor project has paved the way to economic development. Jobs doubled along Euclid Avenue after completion of the Health Line. Here are some other studies. This study on the left is from 2015 academic study. It's very cerebral, so I just cut out a couple things. We find that for metropolitan counties with BRT systems, transit corridors increase their share of new office space by 1/3. Okay? We observe that BRT corridors appear to be gaining share of new offices and multifamily apartments. And then interestingly, they had a long quote about manufacturing, but BRT supposedly fosters the attraction of manufacturing jobs, which is kind of an interesting thing. Street blog, new evidence shows that bus rapid transit done right spurs development. So there's a lot of advantages. So I'd like to talk about the state of our system. Talk about the good news, because people said you should start with good news and then tell you the bad news, and then we'll talk about the good news. The good news, our transit system, we have 215 buses, 62 routes, 51,000 passengers a day. That's a lot. That's as much traffic as all East Washington or all of University. That's 13 million trips a year. 13 million trips a year. That's a lot. We have a $58 million operating budget. Strong support of the council and the mayor. We're 19th in rides per capita in the nation. If we look at bicycles, we're a platinum bicycle city by the League of American Cyclists. We're named the 8th best cycling city in America by Cycling Magazine. The American Census, or American Community Surveys, ranks Madison 7th in the nation for bicycle commuting. And then as far as walking, I couldn't find statistics for walking, but we all love walking, and our downtown is great, right? In fact, how many of you walk around your neighborhoods? We have walkable neighborhoods, and that's not true everywhere. Let's talk about a little bit of the bad news. I abbreviated this to fit in the time. Our motor vehicle capacity cannot keep up. We cannot add 2 lanes in both directions on University. We cannot add 2 lanes in both directions on East Washington. We cannot add 2 lanes in both directions on Park Street. It's just not physically possible. Our bike commute share is actually down a little bit, okay? Our bus ridership is stagnant. We had our peak in 2014. I'm going to say it's stable. From 2016 to now, it's stable, but it was declining from 14 to 16. Metro has some significant infrastructure needs. And Metro does not serve all residents well. And the funding is stagnant. So let's look at a couple of these. This is the Metro Bus Garage. Today they had their retirees dinner, so I went there and had lunch with some retired bus drivers. It was great. It's the best lunch I've had this month. Portions of our current bus barn is over 100 years old, and there's significant infrastructure needs. In fact, Jeannie's helping us, $57 million worth of infrastructure needs. Our current bus barn, designed for 160 buses, now houses 215 buses. This is Wisconsin modal funding, and you can see that the highway program has gone up, local roads has gone up, but the green line represents the funding for transit, and it's remained the same since 2000. So have any of you ever bought tires in the last year? Man, aren't those things expensive? Well, how much more are they today than they were in the year 2000? For some reason in my mind, I have like $40, maybe $50 for a tire, that's no more, all right? That doesn't happen anymore, right? Well, but for our buses, that's kind of what our funding's like, right? We are buying tires in 2018 with the money that we have from 2000. Arrive together. Not all transit trips are the same. This is a report from 1,000 Friends of Wisconsin and the Sierra Club. They have some snippets in there. This is an interesting anecdote. I have to get up shortly after 3 a.m. so that I can leave around 5 a.m. to catch my bus in the morning. I get to work at 6 a.m. I work until 2:30 p.m. I get home around 4 p.m., but I only live about a 19 to 20-minute drive from work. Every morning I have to catch 3 different buses to work and 3 different buses home. And so do any of you use Google Maps on your phone? Everyone does, right? So it has a transit option. If you care, it has a transit option. And so you can say, how do you get somewhere on the bus? And so if you lived on Raymond Road, okay, and you worked at Greenway Cross, there's a lot of manufacturing in Greenway Cross, right? It would take 2 transfers, 3 buses in 1 hour if you left at 6:30 a.m. in the morning. That's a long time if you're raising a family, trying to get childcare. Conversely, if you worked at the university, lived in the same area, it'd be 1 transfer, 2 buses, but 37 minutes. It's a little easier. It's more direct. In fact, our service to our center is very good, but our service around our periphery is not as good. In fact, transfer rate, system-wide. If you're white, 15% of the white riders have to transfer. 3 times more if you're African American have to transfer. Okay? Similar statistics for income level. Travel time more than 45 minutes. Travel time more than 45 minutes. If you're white, 10%. African American, 25%. Similar for income levels. So they experience a different transit system than I do, right? All right, so let's look at some of the good news. These problems are not unknown. In fact, I was looking. I think I'm still on time. I'm going to bring us in before 8. So Madison and Motion's our transportation plan. We just got done with a comprehensive plan and then a regional transportation plan. These problems are all outlined in our plans, and they also have solutions outlined. And from those plans, many metro initiatives are being pursued. One is we're looking at upgrading our East Washington facility and looking for a satellite facility. We are looking actively at transit priority measures, which means giving a bus a priority around a car. Now, this is an example. This is a queue jump where a bus is in the back, and rather than having to wait for that signal with everyone else, they get their own lane. They can jump ahead of the queue of cars, and that helps keep them on time. We're looking at park and ride lots. We're just starting to do that, but it's amazing how many people come up to me and they say, when are you going to get it? When are we going to get park and ride lots? And I said, well, have you ever looked at any of our parking lots? they're park and ride. Right? I mean, they really are. Olin Turville, all of these city parking lots are actually serving as park and ride lots. Bus rapid transit, we had a great meeting here last night. A lot of excitement regarding that. This is an example of what bus rapid transit looks like in Grand Rapids, Michigan. They have a system very similar to ours, about the same size, and so they're a great model for us to see how we can maybe transform our community with it. Service to neighboring communities, two really good outcomes. Sun Prairie is now requesting metro service, so that's going to be a big deal. And then the city of Fitchburg, just 2 nights ago, voted to keep the bus lanes on Fish Hatchery Avenue. And that was a very difficult decision for their council, and they chose to do it because they understand that transit is the future. Intercity bus terminal, electric buses, and then Job Ride Plus, which is really looking at a shared ride service to address some of those inequities where people have to transfer 2 or 3 times to get to a job that's on the periphery. Like I said, all of these initiatives come directly from our plans. Muni Forward. Okay, I'm from San Francisco. A girl that worked for me 15 or 20 years ago, Britt Tanner, now is in San Francisco, and she leads the Transit Geometric Design Unit for the city of San Francisco, which is kind of cool, I thought. She learned from me, and now I need to learn from her. But anyhow, she said 8 years ago, the city of San Francisco said that they initiated a strategic transit implementation, strategic deployment strategy. It was like 5, 6 different words. And they could only live with the name for about 4 months. And then they finally said, we got to brand this thing. And so they branded it Muni Forward, more reliable transit for San Francisco. Muni Forward aims to make getting around San Francisco safer and more reliable. And they have some challenges. They're a little bit different than our challenges. Then they have the solution, transit priority service increases, improvements for people walking. And then they have the results. Now, the press releases for this thing, this is their webpage, but some of these are really staggering. I just love this sentence. This was a press release, the most significant service improvement in decades. I would love to be able to say that in Madison. Implementation and expansion of a rapid network of core routes serving nearly 70% of all riders is providing a whole new level of more frequent and reliable service with transit signal priority and relocation of bus stops, 17 miles of dedicated transit lanes, including transforming one of the oldest fleets in the nation to the newest. So should we have a regional strategy with a branded package? You can see how we are pursuing a lot of things. People don't understand, but that bus barn or the satellite bus facility is just as important to our transit system as the BRT. The BRT is kind of sexy, I want to get on something that looks like a train. A bus barn is not, but they are interrelated. You can't really separate them. If we did, it would provide a broader system that responds to equity and inclusion concerns. It would link high momentum initiatives with low momentum initiatives, and it would provide a framework for multiple interrelated initiatives. So these are just, I asked some graphic designer in our metros, have fun, and they did. These are some pretty good. And then every time I show these, someone gives me a new name. Eventually, we're going to have to narrow down the names, right? I don't even care what it's called. You know what I care? I care that we do it, because it would be so fun to see some of this stuff just take off. So much of the capital funding is already being planned. That doesn't mean it's not difficult, but it's being planned. Let's say a system like this might cost $200 to $300 million. Our council and the mayor has put $57 million in the capital budget to do our bus barn on East Washington. The satellite facility is also in the capital improvement budget. Our consultant for the BRT project says that we have an excellent category. Our ridership is so strong that we automatically qualify on the justification portion of our application for small starts. We would have to qualify on our local commitment, but that's pretty good. Regular programmed improvements. Right now we're going to be reconstructing University Avenue in 2021, right? And we've had meetings on how can we institute transit priority when we reconstruct that. So it leaves other sources. Can we use TIF, grant, private sector, regional workforce transportation authority, impact fees, even the wheel tax. There are other ways to perhaps pay for this. So what do we need? We need the ability to change. We are changing as a metro region. Our transportation system needs to change, which means that we might need to move some bus routes. We might have to move some bus stops. And you'd be surprised at how hard that is, because I like my bus stop. It's right there. I know I walk there But in order for us to really meet the needs that we're going to need to meet in the next 2 decades, we need the ability to change. We need the support of residents and local government, and I say we have that. We need strong relationships with adjacent communities, and I think we're building that. Just the fact of Fitchburg's recent decision and Sun Prairie's recent decision. And we need corporate partnerships, and I think there's a lot of corporations that really want to get involved, but they just don't know how. They just don't know how. And if we had a package, we could probably enlist them. Now, this is what we'd like. We don't need this, but this is what we'd like. We'd like a favorable legislative environment. We'd like the ability to form a local transportation option, which is kind of the code, or it's the new name for Regional Transit Authority. The reason why it's being called local transportation options is because it has broader appeal to some of the northern cities that don't have a transit system. So that would be great, but we can do it without. The city of Milwaukee launched their HOP without an RTA, and then the county of Milwaukee is implementing BRT next year, and they didn't have an RTA. So it can be done without, but it'd be easier if it was done with. Better state funding would be great. So here's the question. Alder Kimball says I better put this question, but if we don't do this now, when will we do this? It's not going to be easier 10 years from now. There's just going to be more traffic. It's just going to be harder. We think, well, we'll just wait till the government changes and maybe we'll get more funding. Well, it might not change. The government. So we have to kind of decide where we want to go. So Madison is where Austin was in the late 1990s. So where do we want to go? Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Now we have about 20 minutes for questions, and I'll be. Are you moving? Okay.
I thought it was very interesting, a number of points you made. One of them about us being compared to Austin. Austin does have a commuter rail system now that's just growing. You also talked about Minneapolis, St. Paul. They put in a very good public transit system, which is mostly rail. Actually paid for itself in 4 years by the value of the property going up, so the property tax is going up. Fixed guideway systems generally, I think, get more of this development more than bus systems do. I'm just a little concerned that, we put so much emphasis. I don't have anything against bus rapid transit, but we do have a rail corridor that already goes around downtown Madison. And the rail system in Dane County, if you take a look at a map of the rail in Madison, you got rail corridors going off in 8 different directions. If the population of Dane County is going to go to 1 million, you would think you might want to start taking a look at the possibility of using some of these rail corridors for a commuter, because you've got rail corridors that go to every one of these cities. And I guess I would just like to hear some comments on why rail hasn't really been considered.
Yeah, actually, I'd like rail. There was an opportunity in the Doyle administration to bring commuter rail here, and the only way that it really made financial sense for us was because we were kind of piggybacking on what the state was doing. Rail is, 2 to 3 times more expensive than bus rapid transit. We were at a point where we were going to submit a New Starts application, and FTA basically told us not to, that we just wouldn't qualify, wouldn't do it, And then they said, look at BRT. Now, you say dedicated running ways. Well, BRT can have dedicated running ways. And Cleveland, I encourage you to look at Cleveland. Cleveland
they say is the gold standard for BRT, and the values and the development that typically are associated with light rail corridors are happening along Cleveland's BRT corridors. And, it's interesting to say that I never thought I'd be saying that in front of 30 people, Cleveland's the happening place, but they're doing pretty good. They're doing pretty good. And that does not preclude rail from the future, but for right now, what we can afford, if we could just get the money for what we could afford, this would be pretty good.
Putting intermodal stations close to a rail corridor so that at some point in the future, if Madison does get put on this intercity passenger rail system going from Minneapolis, St. Paul down to Chicago, it would be nice to have a stop someplace close to an established intermodal station where the BRT people could get off the train, get on the BRT. Is that being considered?
Yeah, actually, in some of our siting, like for instance, we're looking at a satellite facility, and it is near rail. And we're viewing that as a positive thing, that there could be a connection. Then we also will be looking at an intercity bus terminal, and we'll see where that goes. So we are not ruling out rail. I just don't know if I can see rail in my future here. Or if I could see BRT in my future, that'd be pretty good.
Other questions?
You mentioned the public-private partnerships that were successful in bringing transit alternatives, progressive alternatives to the Twin Cities. Can you describe those and how much money was involved and what kind of investments were made, who made them, and what are the restraints in seeing that here in Madison?
Yeah, I think every city has its own unique story. And so I remember talking with engineers that were designing the light rail. At that time, it was called the Hiawatha, and they actually weren't getting paid. They said that they would get a portion of the revenues from the Hiawatha line. And I was working for an engineering company at the time. I said, well, I know our company wouldn't do that. They were taking a risk. They were making an assumption that, if you build it, they will come. And so that was a significant risk. And so it was a public-private problem. And then what also happened is Jesse Ventura, remember him? Yeah, he kind of, I don't know, somehow he gamed the system and got 100 million here, 100 million there. Pretty soon you get a couple hundred million and things go well. So their story is a fun story to read. Ours will be different, but I think ours, we have opportunities. They'll just be different. Many places, all right, I'm just going to go ahead and do it. Many places have RTAs where you can have a sales tax. That would be great, okay? City of Milwaukee doesn't, okay? So they did the HOP. They were able to leverage I think a build grant, but their operating revenue is actually coming from parking. A lot of their, and a grant from the Potawatomi, so, which will be replaced with Fairpox. Milwaukee County, instead, is really heavily using the wheel tax. So any of you notice that your property tax car registration bills are $30 higher this year? Well, the county instituted a $30 wheel tax. The city has not, but the city is allowed to. If we were to institute a wheel tax, that'd be, I think, $7 million a year. You can fund things or service debt with quite a bit, $7 million. That's a tool in the toolbox. It's not the only thing. If we could get our transit funding back to 2006 levels, adjusted for inflation, I think that's another 8 or 9 million. So there's a lot of different pieces that we can put together to make it work. And so
that's the public side, but what about the private side? That's the public side that you're referring to, but what about private investments? You spoke about interest here in Madison and that there were some constraints, but I'm wondering what those might be.
Yeah, I think we have a very generous and active corporate community. They don't, and they'd like to help, but they don't know how. For instance, I think American Family said that they want to be on the BRT line. UW Health said they want to be on the BRT. Lots of people want to be on it. And so if they were to contribute, they could help part of the local share. So typically, if we have a federal small starts grant, it's probably 25-75 or maybe 30-70 or 40-60. But the federal money has to be matched with local money. And we're starting to talk kind of big dollars. Anyone involved in the city budget, are these big dollars? They're kind of big dollars. So, and I keep on trying to push the dollars down, and Jeannie keeps on saying, let's be realistic, let's push them up. So, so there would be opportunities there. We don't know how that would fit, but I think there's a desire in the corporate world to lean into this. That's my feeling from discussions.
I'm a little bit puzzled about the wheel tax problem. You're wanting to get rid of cars, right? And yet you're going to charge a wheel tax? Who's going to be paying the wheel tax if you get rid of the cars?
Yeah, actually, I don't know if I want to get rid of cars or not. I guess I don't have a value. I have a 2003 stick shift Acura that I just love. And so I don't want to get rid of that one. But we don't necessarily have to drive them to get downtown to our work. Rush hour, we can only fit so many cars on East Washington during rush hour, and we can only park so many cars downtown. Right now I have a car, but I ride my bike, and I also take transit. Yeah.
Stay over there.
Thank you. I just had a question about, with all of the proposed ideas for expansion with the public transportation system, if there was any thought into extending the hours to 24-hour access to public transportation?
How long do I have to answer that? I'd love it. Well, the BRT, one of the things about the BRT is they would extend those operating hours, 6 to 12, and it would have a frequency on the weekends. There'd be 10-minute pulses. The problem is that a lot of what you're talking about is, if someone's working downtown as a cook, and they get off at 2, there's no way to get home. If someone wants to work at sub-zero and they're night shift, there's no way to get there. And so we think perhaps shared ride might be an answer to that. We actually submitted for a Dream Up grant to do a shared ride service to take care of 3 types of trips. We did not get that. So we will probably determine a pilot and ask in the city budgeting process if we could try a pilot for a shared ride program to kind of address those off hours when Metro isn't working. So. Shared ride is it's where a service provider, like a van, basically a van would pick up 3 people and drop them off, and often it's door to door. It's not your own vehicle. You're sharing that ride. It's more expensive. A bus ride typically costs $4. $4. You pay $2, but a shared ride trip costs $30. So it's expensive, but it's a critical need to get some of these nighttime jobs, these weekend jobs. It's an important part. So.
Any other questions?
I want to thank you all. If there are no questions, we can end the event. These were really great questions, and I really enjoyed the great set of presentations by our panelists. I'd also like to thank Mayor Soglin and Deputy Mayor Crowley, as well as Jean Hoffman, and Emily Reynolds. Thank you very much, and we hope we will see you at Earth Day and the National Conference, and hopefully there will be similar community forums in the near future. Thank you all.